Hi, I'm Grant Rodiak. I am one of the designers of Havoc. So you guys recently participated in a design competition on Portal's social media page for Havoc to come up with new skills and new structures for the expansion. And Ignacy and the team asked me to review these, and I printed them all out and wrote comments on all of them, and maybe there's a way that we could share that with you. But I'm here to sort of officially judge the competition and the comments that you came up with. We had over 50 submissions, which is super cool, for all 4 races. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about one of the reasons that some of these don't quite work as just sort of a high-level general idea. But then I want to go into talk about a few of them that I really liked and that I think are worth exploring. So at a high level, the reason some of these didn't work, first off, many of the suggestions here were just actually content that's already in the game. I saw a lot of cases of teleport being redone, or new ways for the humans to draw skill cards for various situations. And while interesting, we ultimately don't want to just repeat the same content because we already have it. And in some cases, just giving another race the same content is a little bit strange, and we want to give you guys new stuff with new ideas to come up with things. Another reason that some of these didn't quite work is that they were just way too complex. And I would even argue that in the current Havoc, some of the skills that are so complex are some of the ones that are the least fun because they take so long to learn. And so typically if you have a statement that is too conditional, so it says, if this is true, then this thing happens, and if this is also the case, then do this. And you sort of get down this path. It's just too hard to think about if it's like, if a soldier dies in this battle, and then he has to retreat to an adjacent region where you have this structure, then you get to do this thing. It's just a little too contextual. And then the other problem is that your opponents have to also think about how all those conditions work so that they know how to counter it. So I sort of struck some of those off. There's also a handful of cases where they were just a little bit too narrow, where I remember seeing a couple suggestions where it was literally, this does this thing to this race. And then I saw one which was, this counters that building from that race. Something that's really fun with these games is when we create pieces of content that you can use in a lot of different ways. And when you create a structure or a skill that only works in a very narrow case against a very narrow opponent, it loses its flexibility, and then there's not a lot of strategy, there's not a lot of development that comes in there. And so when I play games like Magic or Netrunner or Havoc or Destiny, I love to figure out how to use some of these cards in a variety of ways. And when you make them too narrow, it's a little too difficult to use. Exchanging crystals to do stuff. And this is sort of a thing that the Pilgrims already do. Some of them had really complicated trade-offs where it wasn't sure if you would, like, if it would be worth it or not. But let me find one that so trade one crystal for a unit from reserve, and this was the Merc facility from Jeff LaFlamme for the humans. And what I said is, I think this is interesting. Unlike the other trade crystals for X suggestions, this is a pretty good trade-off, but still risky. Losing a crystal for a guy, one that may potentially gain more territory in crystals, that's an interesting trade-off. So from Jeff LaFlamme, that was one that I really liked. So move crystals from adjacent region to a region building is in. And that was from Jay Peak on the Pilgrims. And so what I said here is, this is cool. The idea of stealing them to add them, sort of similar to the Pilgrim building or the Pilgrim skill, but is one I wanted to test to see if it changed stuff. And then there's another one from Shane Irons for the Pilgrims called the Nomad. This one made me laugh. It was activates for free when you lose control of a territory. Move the Nomad and up to 2 crystals to an adjacent territory the Pilgrims control. So the idea of picking up your stuff and leaving with the crystals. And for that I wrote, earlier folks suggested we have a way of stealing crystals. I think this is a more interesting version. I really like this idea and would want to test it. And it's also funny. So I thought that was a neat idea. So the idea of trading off and stealing crystals, I thought there was a lot of cool stuff there. Another one that a lot of you guys came up with, and I actually sent an email to Ignacy saying that I think this is something we should actually look into, is the notion of a training center to turn units into super units. And a lot of you guys had different ways of like trade crystals to do this, or lose units to do this, or you just use building actions to do this. And I think some of those were kind of complicated. And what I would want to do is create a new super unit for every race and have a new training facility for every race and have one global way that they all do it. So the idea that you turn 3 normal units into 1 super unit, and that way it's just really simple, something like that. But then the idea is that you sort of like skills is you could have 3 or 4 versions of the super unit, so that I have my, I have my Mutalisk, like looking to StarCraft, for example. I have my Mutalisk version of my Trog super unit this game. Or I have my machine this time has EMP grenades, or my machine next time has a sniper rifle. So I like the idea of having a flexible training facility to trade off guaranteed good playing units to get a super unit. So that one was kind of cool. The other one I like, and I saw a few of you guys talk about this, and I'll call out some specifics, but there was a notion of having new face-down tokens on the battle objectives. So it would definitely make it more complicated, but it would add sort of a new fog of war and a new layer to the battle system. And for those of you wanting an expansion, it's going to be more complicated. So that's okay, I think. There's one called Subterranean Warfare. Let me find this one real quick. I liked the idea of it. Subterranean Warfare from Jung Ken-sen. He had a lot of really cool ideas. He put place Subterranean Warfare token in any battle region with Trog soldiers in the tunnel structure. So there's a sort of a case of the contextual and how many things you need. During the battle phase, when both attacker and defender have chosen to no longer play any tactics cards, the Trog player may move one of their soldiers from one battle objective to another before the battle is resolved. So at the start, that's basically just an existing tactics card, which was outflank, if I recall, which lets you move guys from one to another. And so there's a thing where it doesn't quite work because we already have that. But the idea of it is that the notion of a subterranean trap, where if you're in a battle region and with the Trogs with the trap, at the start of battle resolution, I get to place 3 face-down tokens, 1 on each objective. One of those is a bad thing, one of those isn't, so you don't quite know which one does it. I liked the idea of playing those mind games. There's a couple of these that I really liked. Sorry, it's hard to do this. There's so many of these. So this one's from J-Peak, another J-Peak one. A trap structure that puts a secretly selected combat action token whenever combat is initiated in that region. You add a unit from your reserve to the secret combat action, add 1 unit to area control prisoners or kill, if that makes sense. And I like this idea, and it's sort of like some of my tweaks to Subterranean Warfare, but just the idea that if we had buildings that allowed you to place hidden tokens to add sort of a fog of war layer to the battle objectives, I really like that. So the idea of creating super units and the idea of creating a new sort of fog of war layer for the battle objectives, those were ones that I really liked, and those are things that I would actually like to look into. So Shane Irons and Jane Peak, you guys had some really good suggestions for manipulating the crystals. Jeff LaFlamme had some for the crystals, and then you also see, and here's one more from the crystal manipulation back when I was talking about it. Sorry about the disorganized. As you can see, I have tons of notes. But Richard Sprayberry, love the name, for the machines is in a battle region with at least 1 machine, destroy up to 3 crystals within the region. If you destroy at least 2 crystals, receive 1 victory point. So again, there's this sort of notion of too many contextual statements that starts to get complicated. And then you wrote some notes about the theme. I like the idea, but I had concerns about it. One is that the machines are not super quick or mobile, and so if they take a region early in the game, it's going to be super costly for them to get there, but then lose the points. And then I was worried about the complication of if you kill at least 2, you get 1 more point. But I really liked that it was a useful counter to the humans, and really devastating to the Trogs, who already suffer a half-point penalty. So if you start killing your tokens, that really hits them. And it's a strong counter to the Pilgrims, who can drain crystals for themselves. But it was sort of a lot of work and expensive to sort of hopefully sabotage someone or hopefully upset someone. So I like the idea of, what if it was the idea of an orbital sniper, but you could pop crystals in adjacent non-battle regions. So it was a little bit like a shredder, a little bit like a sniper, but if you didn't have the bandwidth or the desire to go into the region, you could basically set up next to them and just sort of smack their crystals away. And I really like that idea. So Mr. Sprayberry, Mr. Peak, Junkensen, again, I apologize for pronouncing that incorrectly, Randy DeGroff, and Jeff LaFlamme, you guys had some of my favorites, but we had almost 50. There's really good ones, and so I really appreciate you guys contributing these, and hopefully some of my commentary on this is useful to you. I'm going to try to see if we can share this, my comments for you in a useful form, but thank you so much for participating. Thank you for checking out Cry Havoc, and hope you guys have a great day.